Well, a lot has been transpiring around the President's visit to Ukraine, and joining us to give his views on the matter is Willem Els from the Institute for Security Studies. Willem, appreciate your time this afternoon. I suppose first place to start off is the strategic objective of Africa's delegation to Russia and Ukraine.
Good afternoon to you. Yes, just can you repeat your question because it just broke up?
Can you give us some insights into the strategic objectives of the African delegation going to Ukraine and Russia?
Okay, we see that there's a lot of dynamics in terms of on the geopolitical spectrum that has developed and is developing around Russia's invasion of the Ukraine that has been with us for more than a year now, and we see in the United Nations the playing field has developed over the past a year, and we saw that different camps have actually formed, and it is Africa actually positioning itself in terms of the playing field, where they want to be, how they want to be seen, and also who they are supporting. Now we see that South Africa is in a very strange predicament, where they actually profess that they are non-aligned. And but the actions of, for instance, the docking of the Russian ship here, the plane that landed here, and some other incidents also tend to create the perception in the world that South Africa is not as independent or as neutral as it is supposed to be, or they want to profess. And that also now contributes to what is happening in Poland, of course, because we all know that Poland is one of the most staunchest supporters of Ukraine, supporting them with weapons, supporting them materially. Also is very vocal in its support in the United Nations. So South Africa had to land, or the delegation had to land in Poland, because there's a no-fly zone declared in Ukraine. They couldn't land there because of that, and then they had to travel by train to the Ukraine. So all of that actually contributed to the dynamics of what is unfolding at the moment.
Well, Philip, you talk about a playing field, and clearly it isn't even when you take into context what's transpired in Poland. But let's talk about the relationship between South Africa and the two countries. One would imagine that if South Africa is in any way aligned to Russia, that it would be a positive thing, and that if they are going into this mission to seek peace, that they have certainly the president of Russia's ear, would you not say?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult for South Africa to explain itself in the local dynamics where there's also some opposition back in South Africa towards the stance and the policies of government towards that. But we also know that there are some historic influences on that as well. But your challenge now with South Africa, President Ramaphosa, we must just understand that he's a man for negotiations. He's someone who wants to sit around the table. He likes to bring people around the table. I mean, he goes as far back as Kodesa, where he represented the ANC in the negotiations with South Africa. So he's a very seasoned negotiator, and that is where his strong point is, and where we see that he wants to make his mark and also try to make a difference in the situation in Europe. So we should see it from that background. But on the other hand, the negative press, the negative perceptions towards South Africa and their friendship with Russia also is jeopardizing his stance now at the moment.
Now, how does Africa plan to contribute to resolving the conflict and obviously improving the living standards that have been affected across the continent? And I suppose also in the same breath, one would imagine that there has been a conversation between President Cyril Ramaphosa and the other 5 or 6 African leaders. What did that conversation sound like? Because I'd imagine going to both Russia and Ukraine, they would like to speak with a single voice.
Of course. But you must just understand, if you look at the backdrop of the Cold War, where Africa was a playing field for the two superpowers, that actually fought out some of the proxy wars here, and a lot of influence from Africa is actually, in terms of the votes and supports in the United Nations. And that is the backdrop of what happened then. We saw after the fall of the Soviet Union that now we see that there's a new race for the support of African countries, and that is the backdrop of what this is playing off, because at the one hand you have Russia, who is actually trying to win friends in Africa to support them. You've got the Western America and the aligned nations there that is opposing the war in Russia, that is also canvassing and also trying to influence. And Africa is at the moment, they are in a situation where they are being canvassed from both the West as well as Russia in terms of their goodwill and the support that they will give at the end of the day in the United Nations. And so that is where Africa is now trying to establish itself. Africa itself, the African Union itself, has never been united. We also know that it's always been fractions with West African, Southern African, East African fraction, and then you've got the Arab-speaking countries in the north that also not always agreeing with the south. So it's a very difficult dynamic within Africa to create unity. But we see that we've got, for instance, we've got Macky Sall from Senegal that is there. We see that Comoros is there from the French-speaking faction of the African Union. We see that Zambia is represented, but also the Prime Minister of Egypt that is there. So that is pretty representative of Africa and all the blocks in Africa and what we see is that they are trying to portray a united front from Africa in order to promote these negotiations.
Now, obviously, the contingent will have targets and goals of what they would like to achieve if they are to be successful, or at least to make some form of headway. Now, what would amount to progress? Obviously, there is a counter offensive by Kiev at the moment. There is no abating, it would appear, from either side. So coming back from Russia and Ukraine, when they sit down and say to themselves, mission accomplished, what would an accomplished mission look like?
Yeah, that is very difficult. We see, as you rightly said, that President Zelensky, he's very staunch and he's standing on that. Russia must leave Ukrainian soil. And he won't stop until that has happened. On the other hand, you sit with President Putin, who's in a difficult situation. He had some expectations, he created some expectations, and he's not achieving all the goals that he set out. And that is also putting him in a very bad position within his country and with his allies as well. So at the end of the day, it's going to be very difficult to see where they will find common ground in order to create a settlement that is negotiated. So South Africa and the African countries have got their work cut out in order to find middle ground and common ground between these, because we know that they are now in Ukraine, they are speaking to President Zelensky, but then they are going to Russia, St. Petersburg, where they're going to engage with the Russian counterparts. So what is going to come out of this? We can hope for the best, but it's going to be a very difficult one.
Well, there is an assumption that the leaders going out to either country to speak to the two presidents, that both presidents are keen on peace. Do they want peace at this juncture? Is either one prepared to throw in the towel or put up the white flag, so to speak?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. I know that as long as President Zelensky has got the support that he has got and he can continue, he's going to push. But also we know that it's taking its toll on his country. It's taking its toll on his people. You have a lot of his people getting killed on a daily basis. And similarly on the Russian side. So this is not it's a no-win situation at the moment, and I think it reached the stadium where both leaders are maybe reaching that point where they would like to see, listen, how can we stop this without actually losing face?
Now, the United States obviously has expressed concerns about South Africa's alleged support for Russia. So let's talk about the pressures that may mount on the African countries and those that are part of this contingent. Are there any for them to be concerned about?
I think yes. From the West and from America's perspective towards South Africa, they are major trading partners. So they've got a lot of leverage, especially in terms of the AGOA agreement, which they say is about 20 to 25%. But 20 to 25% of our exports is a lot of money and a lot of jobs. So that's on the one hand where they've got a lot of leverage, where Russia does not have that leverage, because if you look at the commercial ties with Russia, it's virtually non-existing. So on that end they work on the goodwill, on historical ties, and etc. Where the Americans and with the Europeans, it's about bread and butter. And at the end of the day, that's going to maybe determine which way it will go for Africa.
Willem Els, researcher at Institute for Security Studies, appreciate your time this afternoon and unpacking for us the challenge that awaits President Cyril Ramaphosa and the African contingent of leadership as they look to broker that peacekeeping deal between Ukraine and Russia.